If you're able to give in a piece of paper that guaranteed you entry into your dream job, would you accept it without question? It's probably quite a few of you who answer yes. But now let me rephrase. Would you accept this paper even if it had no prerequisites, no test for your expertise, no prior education beforehand? There's probably a few of you who be a little bit more cautious, but if you're not, I advise staying until the end of this video to see if maybe you'll be a little bit more open to changing your mind. My name is Skylar, and just like many of you watching this, I assume I'm a college student. My education, and just the education system as a whole, has always been something that I highly, highly value. I could talk forever about how, as humans, it is one of our most sacred abilities that we are able to gain, pass down, and preserve knowledge. And I believe it is of the utmost importance that we protect this from softwares like AI, which are threatening education every single day. It's no secret that artificial intelligence, or more commonly known as AI, is rapidly changing several, if not every aspect of society. Getting into everything would take far too long, so in this video I'm just going to be focusing on how AI is impacting the education system, but more specifically college-level education. My goal with this video is to use a sociological lens to delve into how AI is changing not only the foundation of education, but also the importance that students are placing on their education. My goal with this video is not to fearmonger and scare you, but rather I want to take a step back and critically analyze how AI is impacting the education system as a whole, and how as a consequence of this, it's impacting students like you and I. Without further ado, let's get into it. There has been a severe decrease in the amount of students who actually want to attend higher education institutions. For example, there has been an estimated projection that by 2033, there will be a drop in the number of 18-year-olds who are starting their college education. It is estimated that by 2039, there will likely be 650,000 or 15% fewer of them per year than there are now. To add on to this, there was a drop-off of more than 350,000 students during the first year of the pandemic alone, which means that there are already 2.7 million fewer students than there were at the start of the last decade. So what are some potential reasons behind this? Well, it could be a couple different factors, but arguably one of the biggest ones is the cost of higher education institutions. To shed some light on my own experiences, I currently attend a community college in my hometown because I did not want to rack up 4 years of student loans. While I think transferring is a great option for me, that doesn't obviously work for everybody. Some choose to just not go to college entirely because of these high costs and maybe some other factors as well. But what is it going to mean for the future of our society if less people are getting a college education? While of course not every job requires a higher education, there is still going to be a significant labor shortage. There will be an estimated 6 million fewer workers in 2032 than jobs needing to be filled. 43% of these jobs will require at least a bachelor's degree by 2031. That means more jobs will demand some kind of post-secondary education than Americans are now projected to earn. So even though there's a gradual shift happening in terms of how the public views higher education, that does not mean that less importance is being placed on it through the context of the workforce. Yet, most colleges don't incorporate some of the skills that are most important to your success in the workforce. For example, the top 5 skills employers state that are needed include the ability to work effectively in teams, critical thinking skills, the ability to analyze and interpret data, application of knowledge or skills in the real-world setting, and digital literacy. However, higher education institutions have not emphasized this, turning out graduates who do not have the skills that employers want and need. Think of a doctor, for example. Their job does not solely consist of applying their knowledge to their field of work. They have to work effectively with other doctors, as well as nurses and patients. They have to critically think about what their patients are enduring. They have to be able to analyze and interpret the data they are receiving based on their various tests. These are all skills that extend far beyond a college institution, no matter how much they're taught and rehearsed. In 2012, 60% of Americans believed a college education was worth the cost, while 12% disagreed. Fast forward to 2023, and these numbers have changed drastically, with 56% believing that higher education is not worth the money despite the wage premium that it offers. So even though college education can be viewed as a long-term investment, there are still plenty of young people who are terrified to make this jump. And it makes complete sense. In our current economy, we are seeing everyone in lower and even middle classes struggling financially to some degree. There can't be any blame placed on those who don't want to accumulate debt that could stick with them for a lifetime. One article I came across stated something that I thought was really interesting. The dwindling perception that college is very important has occurred equally among both major political parties, suggesting a broader explanation is required. While the new survey didn't explore the reasons directly, the high cost of college, recent attention to the benefits of trade school, the growth of online learning and micro-credentials, and the potential for revolutionary changes in the labor market presented by recent advancements in AI are all possibilities. All these elements are working together to diminish the public's perception of education and its value. When we have this diminishing value of education, and that's combined with an economy that's not feasibly supporting people who do still receive a college education, and then we throw AI into the mix, how can that possibly go wrong? The ability to critically think is at the root of education as we know it. You cannot learn without having critical thinking skills, which makes them essential to the functionality of education systems. So when we have AI being able to replace those skills seamlessly, this results in a process called cognitive offloading. Cognitive offloading is represented by the cognitive load theory, which posits that human working memory has limited capacity crucial for learning, Learning activities typically demand a significant allocation of cognitive resources, and instructional design plays a pivotal role in either exacerbating or alleviating cognitive load. What AI is doing in relation to this theory is basically making these processes so much easier. It makes them quick, convenient, and efficient, which sounds great, right? However, the issue with this is that it deeply impacts retention of your knowledge. You're not able to remember things as accurately, or you might just forget them completely, which of course undermines the whole entire process of learning and taking in information. Another issue is that when you're offloading all of your critical thinking abilities to an AI software, there's no more room for original thought. One way I've seen professors try to have some type of solution to this problem is that in their Canvas assignments, they'll change the font so that it matches the background of the Canvas page, and they'll have some random phrase that if a student is then copying the entire assignment, they will then have that phrase also be put in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will find a way to incorporate that phrase into their response. Which, this is not only cognitive offloading to a T, but there's also a good chance that one of two things, if not both, are happening here. One, ChatGPT is generating incorrect or misinformation, or it's just hallucinating information, meaning it's making it up on its own. Or two, it's regurgitating the same response over and over and over again, meaning that most students who are using ChatGPT to write their response are going to have very similar, if not the exact same response. This leads me to ask, if there's no original thought, what is the point of learning? What is the point of finding your dream job? What is the point of finding your place in society if you just want to think like everybody else? In this context, schools are not nurturing learners. They're nurturing workers. They're nurturing a production force. This concept seems to represent the functions of education, which is best described by the functionalist perspective. While an important component of school settings is for students to internalize what sociologists call the hidden curriculum, it rests on a fine line. The hidden curriculum emphasizes respect for authority, patriotism, punctuality, individualism, and competition. While these are all important things for students to learn and adopt, these values and norms also seem to mirror that of a workforce. These values are good in moderation, but too much time spent fostering these qualities in students could lead to learning processes being lost in the intentions of efficiency. Education should be there to help you learn what is real and true information, not misinformation and propaganda. These are all wildly important things that should be kept protected and preserved in education systems across the board. Otherwise, so many dangers present themselves. I want to keep this conversation limited to just education systems and not go into the government context, but as I'm saying this, it should be pretty obvious what the dangers are if citizens in a government-ran society are not able to differentiate between what is propaganda and what is real, true information. Some students will use AI as a tool to gather information or maybe synthesize information for them. But the issue with this is that it then violates the concept of search as learning. Search as learning states that the act of searching the web can be a deliberate educational endeavor, rather than a passive consumption of information. The task involves discerning relevant information, evaluating sources, and synthesizing data into a coherent understanding. This requires the use of prior knowledge, metacognitive skills, a working memory capacity, and ability to shift attention between information. This is one of the major reasons behind the counter-argument for AI having the same capabilities as Google. When you're Googling information, you're not being told that answer specifically. While there's plenty of misinformation online, you are still able to stifle through what is real and what's not. You're given a range of sources, not just one answer that somehow condenses everything on the internet on that topic into one singular message. With search engines, you are actively using mental skills to determine what you want to use in your research and what you want to discard. When I was doing the research for this video, I read probably well over 30 or 40 articles, but I didn't incorporate the information from all of them, and the ones that I did incorporate, I didn't use every single one of their main points. Rather, I used them to expand my knowledge on this broad topic and to hone in on the small details that I wanted to discuss. I want to touch on memory retention because this is such a big part as to why AI making things easier is such a big issue. While, to some degree, it does offer a benefit of accessibility and ease, this does not mean that it's benefiting you as a learner. There's an interesting study conducted by researchers at MIT who wanted to assess this concept, and they did so by incorporating 3 different groups: a brain-only group, a search engine group, and a learning language model group. These groups were assigned the task of writing an essay within the constraints of their group's criteria. The brain-only group could only use their own prior knowledge to write an essay, while the search engine group could use a combination of their own knowledge as well as search engine tools. And the learning language model group could only use a learning language model to write the essay. The biggest difference between the results of all 3 groups is that the learning language model group significantly underperformed in their ability to quote their own essay. 83% of participants had difficulty quoting their essays in the first session, and they had the complete inability to quote accurately. In contrast, the search engine group and the brain-only group achieved near-perfect quoting ability, and by session 3, 100% of both groups' participants reported the ability to quote their essays with only minor deviations in quoting accuracy. This demonstrates that learning should not be effortless. You should not be able to just put in a prompt and have a learning language model spit out the answer for you. You're doing yourself a major disservice if this is your goal in an academic setting. All this proves that when you're cheating yourself out of critical thinking abilities, you are dismantling your education as a whole. You are becoming a cog in the machine. But how do these cognitive offloading processes happen in the first place? Well, I would argue that they don't happen instantly. Rather, it happens at a gradual pace. When you have something that gives you the benefit of saving time and just making your life easier as a whole, why would you not feel inclined to use it, even if it starts off in a small and insignificant way? I think one of the biggest reasons as to why this happens is because of our epidemic of insecurity. Now, this is most notably happening within my generation, Gen Z. And I think social media really nurtured this. We constantly encounter hundreds of videos a day when we're just doom scrolling on our phones, right? We are seeing people living these big, extravagant, amazing lives, and we're comparing ourselves to them by thinking, I'm not as pretty as them, or I'll never be as successful as them, or I'll never have all these things that make their life so amazing. It isn't a surprise then that these thoughts and behaviors have started to impact the academic world as well. I think at some point in our lives we've all felt like we're not smart enough. AI acts as a crutch for this fear. It can make you sound smarter. You can give it a prompt and it will give you the perfect answer. When you combine an epidemic of insecurity with a tool that then alleviates some of this insecurity to some degree, an over-dependence starts to take shape. An additional component that significantly relates to this topic is the concept of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is defined as an individual's subjective perception of their capability to perform in a given setting or to attain desired results. It sounds rational then for someone with lower self-efficacy to feel more stressed with their schoolwork, which would then make them feel more inclined to turn to AI. Like I said before, this process doesn't happen instantly. You don't go from not using AI at all to incorporating it into every single one of your routines completely. To put it in terms of a habit that I'm sure we can all relate to, think of when you're watching a really good TV show. You tell yourself you're just going to watch one more episode, and then it turns into 4 or 5 episodes, and by 2 in the morning you've now finished the entire show. Or speaking from experience, I tend to doom scroll quite a lot, especially at nighttime. I use it as a way to not think about all the stressful thoughts that keep me up at night. Instead, I will stay awake until 3, 4 in the morning on my phone because it becomes an easy way to not feel stress at night. This can be applied to AI because as soon as you see how much stress it can reduce from your life, you may feel way more inclined to use it as often as you possibly can. I really want to reiterate that my goal with this video is to not place blame on people who have this overdependence on AI. As I mentioned before, while AI can make you sound smarter, that doesn't mean it's benefiting you as a learner. It doesn't mean that because you got the good grade that you now understand the material. If anything, it's the complete opposite. You were able to get the assignments done at a much quicker pace, but you didn't really retain any of the information because you weren't the one actively doing it. The trickle-down effect is really at play here, because once you start that process, the perceived benefits of AI will start to become more and more alluring, until it has become such a pivotal component of your life that feels unchangeable. To switch gears a little bit, I found a study that stated that the more informed someone is about the developments of AI, then the more uncertain they become of its outcomes. This means that the more you know about AI, the more of an impact this knowledge will have on how you see its potential benefits and consequences. If you can take anything away from this video, I want you to take away this. Staying up to date and aware of what AI is doing to our society and will continue to do is one of the best assets you have. Our world is quickly pushing the narrative that in order to have success in the current and future workforce, you need to be able to adapt and use AI as best as you possibly can. Now, I'm not trying to say that you should buckle down and refuse to do anything that's beneficial to you, but rather I want you to think about why this narrative is being pushed. We should be identifying who are the people saying this and asking why they are encouraging AI literacy, adaptability, and accessibility so extensively. I need to remind you, ChatGPT has been open to the public for barely 3 years now. Like I said before, I'm not trying to tell you what you should or should not do with AI. I'm sure many of you watching this already use it at some point in your life, whether it's in an academic setting or not. Rather, the crucial component here is that you stay aware. You may have an understanding of the benefits of AI, but I think it's equally, if not more important, to be aware of its consequences. Stay aware of how to tell the difference between real and hallucinated content. Be aware of how to check your sources and make sure AI is actually quoting accurate, credible sources. All of these things are pivotal to making sure that AI is being used as a tool for you and not a detriment to your life. Alright, so I've talked a lot about 2 major topics and themes here, but now I want to take a sociological lens to really analyze how this is going to impact the future of education and what this all means for the future of our society as a whole. But I do want to preface this by saying that I'm not going to be saying it as if this is the definitive truth, that these things are surely going to happen. Rather, I want to have an open conversation about what this all could lead to. One angle I really want to focus on is through the symbolic interaction theory. The symbolic interaction theory analyzes society by addressing the subjective meanings that people impose on objects, events, and behaviors. Subjective meanings are given primacy because it is believed that people behave based on what they believe and not just on what is objectively true. Thus, society is thought to be socially constructed through human interpretation. People interpret one another's behavior, and it is these interpretations that form the social bond. These interpretations are called the definition of the situation. So how does symbolic interactionism play a role in terms of how AI is impacting education and the value people are placing on it? Well, we can take a step back and look at how education has played a pivotal role in our society over periods of time. In ancient civilizations, people started to learn as a way to keep knowledge preserved to a limited group of people, typically the wealthy and powerful. For example, in ancient Egypt, hieroglyphics was the most prominent system of writing. While this was already a difficult system of writing to learn, it was purposely made to be even more challenging so that it could only be taught to a very select group of people. This in turn preserved the elevated status of the scribe and kept that knowledge limited to just the groups that the scribe was a part of. Throughout different civilizations, education has had a different goal, but it's pretty safe to say that for the most part, education has been associated with power. The difference between education systems back then and education systems of today is how society views the importance of knowledge. A significant meaning has been placed on college in a modern context because it has become linked with the first steps for living a successful life. Success in our society is often defined by the job that you maintain and how much money it pays, which makes receiving college education absolutely pivotal. It's interesting to think about how this importance placed on getting a successful job has played a key role in the process of learning. When I was discussing the top 5 skills that employers look for, I mentioned working well with other people, being able to critically think, effectively analyzing data, applying your skills in the real world, and maintain digital literacy. I want to circle back to how AI is being implemented to dismantle these skills. I've already talked about how AI is undercutting critical thinking abilities and memory retention, but how is it impacting the symbolic meaning of the usage of these skills in your education before you enter the workforce? Getting a degree is often looked at as a way from going from point A to point B, having no degree, no work experience, to then having a degree and having a successful job. But I cannot stress enough how what happens between these 2 points is truly what matters here. Oftentimes, instructors don't want you to just answer the prompt as perfectly as you can. It's not about having the perfect sentence that incorporates the perfect source that answers the question perfectly. Rather, it's the process of actively learning the mechanics of a proper sentence, or how to find sources that will uplift your credibility, things of that nature. Sure, AI can do all this for you in a matter of seconds. Then you're left with the perfect essay. Did you actually gain anything? Or did you constantly offload all that information for the sake of saving time and energy, for the sake of convenience and the fear of insecurity? With that being said, the blame does not solely rest on the shoulders of those who are using AI, or instructors who are making AI adaptable prompts. Instead, we need to analyze the meaning of getting a good grade, or getting a degree, which has caused these pivotal learning experiences to be lost. Through the context of symbolic interactionism theory, we as a society have placed so much significance on receiving the best grade possible in an academic setting, which then translates to getting a degree or credential in the most effective way possible in the work setting. There are many reasons as to why this shift has started to occur, but one of the most prominent is people will justify their AI use. They will do so by claiming that whatever assignment they're doing doesn't actually relate to their major or their real-world work experience, so why does it even matter? They view it as pointless, so why would they put in the energy to complete the work anyway? Yet the value of learning does not solely relate to the material in the class or the assignment prompt. For example, when you're writing an argumentative essay, the goal is not to sound as smart as you possibly can. Rather, you should be learning about how to formulate an argument, find credible sources, synthesize your data, to form one organized, well-structured essay. What's happening here is the focus has now become on the end result, not the path it takes to get there. It's focused on the solution, not the steps you need to understand the solution. This relates to one argument that I've seen quite a lot with those who are pro-AI, and it has to do with calculators. Many argue that AI usage and calculator usage are very similar because they both result in solving a complicated problem and reducing the meticulous tasks in solving that problem. However, my counter-argument to this is that you still need to learn how to use a calculator. You can't hand a calculator to a 5-year-old and say, solve 5,130 divided by 7 and then find the square root of that and all these complicated steps, right? The kindergartner isn't going to know how to do any of that because that's not at their level. They haven't learned those math skills yet. A calculator simplifies things. Yes, I'm not denying that at all. But you are the one who's actively still needing to learn how to break down these problems into applicable steps that you can then input into a calculator. On the contrary, you plug a math problem into an AI software, and it not only gives you the solution, but it gives you every single step it took to get there. And while I understand that this can be an effective study tool when used properly, this leads me to my main overarching point for this whole video. In my opinion, the dangers and consequences of AI far outweigh any potential benefits. The threat it poses to critical thinking, memory retention, and overdependence are just a few of those consequences. As I already said, ChatGPT has only been open to the public for about 3 years now. It's not like it's been this prominent, consistent force in our world. So it's absolutely chilling to see the overdependency that's already taken shape. 10 years down the line, I'm terrified to think about what education systems are going to look like, if they even still exist in the way that we know them to today. I get that it sounds like I'm trying to fearmonger, but really I'm just trying to stress how important it is to not fall victim to the easy accessibility that AI can offer. There's so much value to be gained in learning, thinking, and writing for yourself. These are things that you should never be willing to give up. I'm gonna wrap this video up by revisiting the question I asked you in the very beginning of this video. I asked if you would be willing to accept a piece of paper that guaranteed you entry into your dream job, even if it had no prerequisites, no training beforehand, no prior education, none of that. It's completely understandable if your answer has not changed since you answered yes, but I do hope that by now you are a little bit more aware of why this is so dangerous. I'm envisioning a world 20 years from now where people in the workforce used AI throughout most, if not all, their education journey. They were so honed in on creating their most perfect work that they offloaded their thoughts into AI softwares, and then they weren't able to retain any of the information needed to do their job to the best of their ability. I know I wouldn't feel good about that, and I'm sure you wouldn't either. This is why it is of utmost importance that we start to shift the meaning of education to one that is not associated with power and limitations, or that's solely measured by how successful a job you'll receive once you complete it. With that being said, I want to end this video more of a positive note. If you're someone who really struggles with learning in a college institution or just any type of educational institution as a whole, I get it. Education systems are not set up for everyone. They don't pertain to every single learning style, and that's an issue. Education should not revolve around a letter grade or a point system. It shouldn't just test you on your memory of things rather than your understanding of them. So I challenge you to not just limit your education to an institutional setting. Learn for the sake of your own personal knowledge, not for the sake of just getting a grade. Keep a list of things that you want to discover more about. Go visit museums, go to the nonfiction section of your local library, watch long-form content on YouTube, watch documentaries, go walk in nature, go explore. Keep yourself curious. Take notes on all this information, not so you can study it for a test, but so that you have a physical representation of all the newfound knowledge you've gained. As someone with extreme academic validation to the point where so much of my self-worth revolves around my grades, I'm really trying to decenter my association with my education and my eventual success. I'm trying to separate my personal value of learning from the value that college institutions have placed on it. I'm making efforts to learn about things that I want to because I want to, not because it fulfills a certain criteria that my degree requires. I truly believe that this is one of the first major steps we can take to preserving the sanctity of knowledge and to dismantle the increasing infiltration of AI in our society.